Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the Africa Integration Think Tank, which is the mother company of the African Integration News Agency. We are here to discuss a few things pertaining the integration process of the African continent. My name is Gashegu Muramira, the head of the think tank and the news agency. With me in the studios today, I have Professor Go. Professor Go is a very social person when it comes to integration. Many of you have met him, he has talked to you, he has done a lot of trainings on the different stages of integration on the continent. He has worked on the initial stages of the formation of the AfCFTA. He worked with COMESA. He also worked with the East African community as a consultant, where he developed the ESC regional trade policy. He also worked on the ESC regional AfCFTA implementation strategy. So we are glad to have you here, Professor. I'll give you some time to introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Seth Gore. I'm a professor of economics in the Department of Economics and Development Studies at the University of Nairobi. But I've also had experience working at COMESA as the coordinator for the tripartite capacity building program, which was trying to put together the tripartite free trade area. Additionally, I've worked on a consultancy basis for the formerly AfCFTA implementation unit of the AU, which is the current AfCFTA Secretariat. But I've also worked on a consultancy basis for the East African community. In particular, I was the lead consultant in the development of the ESC regional trade policy and the ESC regional AfCFTA implementation strategy, amongst many other assignments.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm sure the members, the audience, those that follow the Africa Integration Think Tank, those that follow the African Integration News Agency are very happy about the introduction we just made. It's quite a rich experience that you are resourceful in matters of integration. Now, LA Africa would want to ask, what is the AfCFTA? There's been different intergovernmental organizations on the continent. We've had the East African community, we have SADC, we have COMESA, we have ECOWAS. Though I must say the ESC is doing very well in terms of implementation of programs and succeeding in different areas compared to the other regional economic blocs. What is so special with the AfCFTA? Why is it that it is trending now? What is it that is bringing that is unique to the African person?
Thank you. The AfCFTA is a unique trading arrangement in the context of Africa, because the AfCFTA, the idea of forming the AfCFTA is actually related to the formation of some of the RECs that exist today, because the formation of AfCFTA goes back to the Abuja Treaty. Now, it's under the Abuja Treaty that African heads of state and government envisioned an African economic community, and they provided stages for the development of the African economic community. Now, one of those stages was that there was need to strengthen RECs that were existing at that time, or to form new RECs, so that the RECs would be consolidated into a common African market. Now, that being the case, this idea got fresh impetus in 2012, following the 18th summit, ordinary summit of the AU heads of state and government, where the heads of state and government endorsed an action plan for boosting intra-African trade, what is called BEAT. And they endorsed a roadmap for the establishment of an African economic African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, the difference between the AfCFTA and the other existing regs is that the regs are smaller and they cater for regional dimension of integration within the continent. So there's a reg in Central Africa, there's a reg in West Africa, there's a reg in North Africa, there's a reg in East Africa, there's a reg in Southern Africa. But now, within this arrangement, the AfCFTA now brings all these regs together. Now, that is important because African countries are bedeviled with this problem of belonging to different regs. Now, the problem with different regs is that if they have trade regimes, of course there are regs that don't have trade regimes, like IGAD, like CENSAD. But where the regs have a trade regime, like EAC, like COMESA, then they then have rules for trading. They have trade rules. So a business person in Kampala who wants to trade under COMESA, because Uganda is in COMESA, but Uganda is also in EAC. So a business person in Kampala wanting to trade under COMESA has to trade under COMESA rules. The same business person, when he faces the EAC market, he then has to trade under the EAC rules. Now, in a scenario where countries belong to many regs, like in the case of DR Congo, which belongs to 4 of those regs, the business person then has to contend with different sets of rules, even for the same product. For instance, a business person selling clothes, he manufactures clothes in Uganda, and a component of these clothes is imported from outside, then has to think about the thresholds for the value of non-originating material. Because those thresholds are different in different trade regimes. So what the AfCFTA does is that it now unifies the rules so that the business people have only one set of rules to deal with. Now that makes it easy and cheaper. That makes it easy and cheaper for the business people to conduct their trade. That is the uniqueness of the AfCFTA. Additionally, in terms of just numbers, AfCFTA is constituted in terms of numbers. It then becomes the largest trade area in terms of numbers, because EU is just 28. Yes, all these regs, even the ones that exist in Africa, the largest is COMESA at 21. And so that means that AfCFTA avails a larger market for business people, a market of more than 1.3 billion people. So that is the reason there's a lot of interest around the AfCFTA.
We thank you so much, members, for continuing to support our news channel, the Africa Integration News Agency, and our forum, the Africa Integration Think Tank. On the studio today, I want to remind you that we have Professor Go. Professor Go has a long working experience with different intergovernmental organizations like the East African Community, COMESA, and finally the AfCFTA, which is our main subject today. Professor, you've talked about trade regimes in the different regional economic communities. EAC has a trade regime, COMESA has one. How is the coming of the AfCFTA going to solve the issue of traders having to shift to one country, changing from one trade regime to another, which also comes with increased cost of doing business? We want to understand, especially on the issue of free movement of people, free movement of goods. How is FTA going to solve that problem?
So now the issue of trade regimes is resolved in this manner. For the rules of trade, for instance, the rules of origin. Now, what happened under the AfCFTA is that different RECs brought together their rules and harmonized them so that the rules of origin reflect the real needs for each region, but those rules now apply for trade between any country and the entire set of countries within the continent. For instance, under EAC, there are rules of origin that prescribe how a good qualifies to be treated preferentially on account of its originating status. But COMESA also has a different criteria. Now, under AfCFTA, there is a harmonized set of criteria, which means that an individual business person does not have to contend with one set of rules to satisfy the requirement of the COMESA market and another set of rules to conform with the requirements under the EAC market. And so that simplifies the entire process of trade, because complying with rules is costly. If there are many sets of rules, it becomes even costlier for the business person. And so harmonizing those rules into one not only expands the scope in terms of the market for the business person, but also makes it easier for the business person to do their business within a larger market space.
Viewers, we encourage you to continue subscribing to our channel, the African Integration News Agency. We also encourage you to continue subscribing to our conversations on the African Integration Think Tank. Prof, can you kindly take us through the different protocols of the AfCFTA, and also tell us how easy the FTA is going to make air travel easy, and especially other than even air travel among people, because we see countries still having issues with travel. Our people on the continent, you go to Zambia, they need a visa. Zambian comes to Rwanda, they need, I think Rwanda has already abolished issues of the visa. It has actually, unlike some other countries on the continent. Why do we still have restrictions on visa, yet we keep forming intergovernmental organizations like EAC, FTA? We even still have countries where it is easy to get into, but even harder to exit, like DRC. I think DRC has an exit visa, South Sudan. What is the solution? Why are we having these problems, yet we keep new regs coming up?